Hello and welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week. With me as your host, Chris Roms Away McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80, and joining me for this episode is Brian Rom-Com Hickey.
Whee!
On this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, we look at the third and final issue of Rom Wraiths. Yeah, that one. So without further ado, let's get stuck in, shall we? 1969, the secret Earth satellite safeguarding the moon landing is infested by dire Wraiths. Worse, the Wraiths now have transport to Earth, and the crew of the first moon landing can only stop them by making the ultimate sacrifice. Plus, the special ROM backup with art by Guy Dorian Sr. and ROM legend Sal Buscema continues in explosive fashion. And I've actually said Sal's surname incorrectly there. I forget how it's actually pronounced now, but I heard it the other day and I'm like, yeah, I'm not saying that properly. I think it's Buscema. It might be Buscema. So I apologise if I've been saying that wrong my entire life, but I know I'm saying it wrong at the moment. So if any one of our listeners want to chime in the comments, then at least you know I'm wrong. At least you know I'm wrong. Anyway, creative team, One Small Step for Dire Wraith Kind Part 3, writer Chris Ryall, artist Ron Joseph, colourist Jim Boswell, letters Sean Lee, editor David Marriott, and One Small Step for a Space Knight Part 3, writer Chris Ryall, artist Guy Dorian Sr. and Maria Keane, colours Ross Campbell, letters Sean Lee, editor David Marriott again. And we'll start with this issue. I know it's been a long time since we did a ROM issue. This is the third and final issue, and we'll start with the covers on this one. Brian get kind of acclimatized to doing ROM again, and we've got cover A, and that's art by Luca Pizzari. What do you think of this one?
I mean, what an amazing cover. I love kind of the monotone feel to it. It has that sort of, 60s kind of retro kind of vibe going on there. It's a beautiful illustration of our crew of Apollo 11, but with these very sinister, silhouetted dire Wraith heads. It's just a really nice, creepy piece of artwork, and totally spot on for this little trilogy.
I agree. Very creepy, sepia tone, giving it that kind of vintage feel. It's either Instagram or it's very old. So I do like that one very much. And yeah, it's nice that I like the fact that all of the, you've got Aldrin, Armstrong and Collins all in their kind of spacesuits here. Because obviously this is, if we kind of zoom back to the last issue and the last two issues, this is the Apollo 11 mission, and this is the kind of moon landing, and tying in the moon landing with this kind of ROM dire Wraiths kind of storyline. So it's really interesting because when the astronauts go dark, as you would say, when they're kind of radio silent, they're on the other side of the moon, the dark side of the moon. They obviously, you lose that communication, that line of communication, and during that time, this story kind of kicks off and happens. And that's, what I like about this cover is that we're tying in both of those things, and also the astronauts are very clearly drawn, but the dire Wraith heads are kind of almost like glitching, almost like it's a fuzzy glitching kind of effect. So yeah, really
they're
dark.
Like shadows. I mean, it makes them way more sinister and creepy looking,
and it insinuates that the astronauts have been taken over by dire Wraiths, which I suppose we'll find out if that is the case as we get through this issue. Now, moving on to cover B, by art by Corin Howell, colours by Josh Perez. What do you think about this one? This doesn't actually happen in the issue, but it's still quite a cool little concept, isn't it?
Yeah, I actually love this. This is actually a super cover. So it's the re-entry part of Apollo 11.
Yeah.
It's got all that kind of red glow on the bottom of the craft as it's kind of coming into the atmosphere. And you've got this dire Wraith basically riding it down to the surface of the Earth. And it's just a brilliant concept, brilliantly done. And of course, if you're seeing these covers and you haven't read issue 3, these are all possible outcomes for how things could go down at the end of this story. So we have, outcome number one, we've got the three astronauts are all Wraiths, or outcome number two, the astronauts are in the Descender module, but there's a Wraith hitching a ride back to Earth. So it's a pretty cool alternate take here.
I would say that cover A, you could say the option is that all the astronauts are kiwi fruits, and they've just been cut in half, and that's the seeds that are showing. Anyway, no, I agree. I do like this. This cover B is really cool, and the kind of effect of that burning up on re-entry effect on the actual module is really nice. And that you can kind of see that the Wraith is almost like he's clinging on for dear life, and obviously one of his hands has come away. Maybe it's a little too hot. Maybe it's trying to get another grip on the module. But you can kind of, with its mouth open, it kind of looks like it's in a little bit of pain as it's burning. It's really cool, and obviously you can see the Earth underneath as well, like as it's coming into that atmosphere. But I really like that one. I think it's really nice. And finally, we have the retailer incentive, and this is obviously art by Guy Dorian Sr., colours Ross Campbell, and this one's really nice as well, and it really shows Rom kind of hench, doesn't it? Like really, really cool kind of depiction of Rom on that cover.
I mean, this is a brilliant cover. So you've got this kind of really beefed up kind of Rom. It's an excellent piece of artwork on the character of Rom. And then behind him, we have all these different photos or snapshots of really the rest of the cast from this particular story. Love the colouring on this. Love the way it's kind of laid out. Everything kind of fanning out, like exploding out. It's super cover.
I was kind of wondering at first whether it, instead of being Rom, it might be that I think it might be the other Space Knight who they were
Dorian or something.
Yeah, in the follow up. In the kind of other story, the backup story, because he is huge in that. So it could be very similar looking to Rom as well. I'm not 100% sure on that, but Rom is usually drawn a lot kind of sleeker and thinner. So it could be that that's the Dorian character. I'm guessing named after Guy Dorian Sr., which is brilliant. But anyway, so let's get stuck into another great cover as well, I should say. But let's get stuck into the actual issue. And if you remember last time we spoke about 2 years ago about this, the last issue, basically the Inhumanauts, or the kind of Inhumanoids homages, have all been taken out bar one, and that is this Dr. Brightside, who is in the blue gear with what I affectionately call the salad tongs weapons on his arm. I find those kind of funny. They just look like salad tongs to me. But, so he's basically the last one left. The other Inhumanauts have been kind of wiped out. Both astronauts are still alive.
We do have Sandra Shen up in the...
Yeah, I'm talking about the Inhumanauts, though. Sandra Shaw, yeah, she's still alive. But we'll get to her in a sec. But in terms of the Inhumanaut characters that are kind of on the moon, they've all been taken out. All the different weaponized, Kiev, Flannery. I can't remember the other names. There was Anatoly Kiev. There was Flannery, Brightside, and one more, and I forget the name, but it doesn't really matter because they're dead anyway. One Wraith has managed to come face to face with Collins on the support module. One Wraith is battling Sandra Shaw, or trying to find Sandra Shaw. Two other Wraiths that were on the moon fighting the astronauts and the Inhumanauts. One has been killed by a projectile flag, and the other one is now left and is fighting the remaining astronauts and this last remaining Inhumanaut. I say the two astronauts and this last remaining Inhumanaut. Now, what we find as we go into this issue, and again, the art is still pretty solid on this, isn't it, Brian, as we kind of get stuck into this issue?
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, that opening panel, full page, and we've got this Wraith, and he's bulked himself up. He's, burst out of whatever kind of suit or armor he was wearing. He's got these kind of, rock-like spikes forming out of his shoulders, and he's got his grip on Brightside, and he really looks like, he means business. He's going to finish these guys once and for all. And it's not looking good for our human characters at this point.
And what we find out is that this particular Wraith, he also had his arm cut off, I think, in the earlier issue. So he's grown it back, effectively. But doing that and doing all this kind of bulking up, it's surmised by Dr. Brightside that he's used up all of his energy. He's used up all of everything that he could possibly use. He's used it up, and now he's just basically kind of used it all to bulk up. So he says that, you're not going to be, you can't hurt us, can you? You're not in the same kind of, and this dire wraith is like, you found me out, and then
damn you, human,
and then kind of hotfoots it away. It's kind of like, basically he's looking for the kind of anomaly that brought them there to find more energy, isn't he? Basically.
Yeah, it's the remains of the portal that they escaped through, which we know from the kind of corresponding Rom Soulster Knight story. They escaped from their dimension to here, not really knowing. They escaped in a hurry and didn't know where they were going to come out. So he's hurrying back to the remains of that portal to try and recharge himself. And in the process, he kind of transforms into this kind of dragon or snake, and he's just scurrying across the surface of the moon, which looks pretty cool.
Let's call it a snaggin. It's a snake dragon or a drake. I think a snaggin sounds funnier, so we'll go with a snaggin for this one. Yeah.
Our human crew decide that it's so basically, it's Neil Armstrong and
Buzz
decide and Brightside decide they're going to give pursuit, and then it cuts away to one of the other surviving dire wraiths, who has decided that he is going to go up to the Adventure 1 satellite, which is orbiting above the moon. So he's basically taken the Inhumanoids or Inhumanauts spacecraft and has gone up to the satellite, knowing that Sandra Shen is still alive. So he intercepted a distress call from her. So he's stalking her through the in his dire wraith form, not in his Dr. Hank form, and he's talking a lot of smack here, trying to scare the bejesus out of her. He's kind of feeding off her fear. He sees her in her spacesuit, and she's saying, "Please, please," and he dives on the suit, and the suit is empty. And all of a sudden, bang, right in the back, he's taken down.
And that's where we get this cracking, shot of Sandra Shen, behind him with this weapon, this kind of electronic pulse weapon that she's just electrocuted him with. Not just taking him out, but then proceeds to extract blood from it with this syringe, because she's going to find out, what the hell they're made of, effectively. And which is also quite interesting here, because she explains that she's terrified of this creature, because this creature's saying but you should fear me, and that fear should cripple you, and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, well, that's something you'll find out about humans. Yes, I'm terrified of you, but I use that fear and I divert it into something else, and that's how I cope with it. And as she stabs this creature with this syringe to extract this, blood or whatever it would be that would come out of this thing, it transforms, or begins to try to transform into Hank again. Now, this is interesting because the form that the artist has drawn this character in looks absolutely nothing like the Hank Armstrong that was in the previous issue. For one thing, Hank had black hair, it was a different hairstyle, the face was kind of very different. And it's quite interesting that they've done that. They've drawn it slightly differently. It almost looks a little bit more like Collins, the pilot for the command module, but it can't be because he's elsewhere in a different scenario. So yeah. Anyway, she extracted and the funny thing is, it tries to transform into Hank to kind of say, no, there's still something of me left inside, and she's like, don't give me that bullshit. As she's extracting this goop, because she knows that the scans have basically found that there's no trace.
There's no Hank
of
in
him
there
left. Yeah.
Well, how I interpreted that was that the creature's dying, and it attempts to transform into Hank, but it can't do it.
Yeah.
So what we get is this kind of very lame looking, very weak looking kind of character. Even the hair is all kind of messed up, and he's really. It's not able to make a full transformation. It's even the eyes are still green.
Yeah. I'll let them off then. I'll let them off with that one. But it's funny to me that it's very different from the Hank from the previous issue.
Alternatively, they just forgot what Hank looked like because it's been so long.
It's been ages. Now, it's legitimately been a long time. This is not just our fault. We have been pretty poor the last. We've been great the last few months, but prior to that, we had a huge gap where we hadn't done any comics bursts, but I'm not taking the full blame for this because this issue took a long time to come out, didn't it? I think it only dropped in I want to say it was early this year. We're only talking, it's only been out for a few months, hasn't it? Issue 3.
Weeks, we're talking, really. Weeks at this rate.
So that's, again, we're actually on it with this one. Anyway, so it basically flips back then as Sandra Shen takes the juice out of this blimmin' creepy dire wraith. We flip back over to the Snaggan, and this Snaggan is making his way over to the portal, converts back to its normal kind of dire wraithy form, and then as the I do like in the background the astronauts and Dr. Brightside just kind of slowly plodding through, chasing after him. It kind of starts
basically jumping, yes, space hopping or whatever you call that.
He's talking about the fact that he does over time as a dire wraith, it extracts the knowledge and information of all of the species that it sucks the life out of, and you see it kind of transforming into these 3 different species, which is quite interesting. Like an ant one and a goopy kind of weird rock kind of one, and then this blue-skinned humanoid kind of creature.
Yeah, it's like a chiss or something out of Star Wars. Is what I'm kind of thinking. But yeah, it's kind of a really weird. He obviously the humans are hot on his heels. He's planning some sort of dastardly trick here, and he goes through this kind of metamorphosis. It's like as if he's trying to pick. Yeah, that's how I thought. He's going to pick a form in which to kind of make his last stand against the humans. Yeah, absolutely. And as the humans kind of I suppose close in on this dire wraith, they do have one weapon, and they give it to Brightside. Oh no, Brightside actually has the weapon. He gives it to one of the astronauts and says, "Look, I'm going to go up there. I'm going to grab this thing, and then you shoot it when you get the opportunity." And as Brightside flies at this creature that's standing next to the portal, he just phases straight through it because that isn't the dire wraith. The dire wraith isn't there. It's like a optical illusion. And as he phases through this dire wraith, who's obviously using the last of its power to kind of confuse the the astronauts and Dr. Brightside, he goes straight through him into this portal, which absolutely destroys him. You assume kills him because you get the Wilhelm scream, don't you? Which can I say, we missed out the Wilhelm scream on the last Disorder of Battle, which I'm going to put in here now, but there is one, and it's when the Red Shadow grabs the Marine and they pulls him to its death off the cliff edge. Ooh, so the cliff edge,
I'm throwing that in there now just to say that we forgot it, but we're reminding you of it now. So anyway, that Wilhelm screams. We get another one here. It's
it's not a happy ending for Brightside. That's our Inhumanauts gone.
Yep.
They're gone. So it's just Collins and Buzz Aldrin. Not Collins, sorry. Armstrong and Aldrin are the only 2 left. I was going to say Buzz Dixon. That's a different Buzz.
Buzz Dixon's there. Right in the next screenplay. Absolutely.
So we've got Armstrong and Aldrin, kind of really making the last stand here. The dire wraith comes at them and just grabs. They don't actually use their names. They use things like Commander and Captain. So I'm not able to keep track of who's who, but one of them has the gun. The dire wraith, has obviously renewed its strength. It reaches out with its tentacles. It disarms him. It's got him in its grip, and it's not looking too good for. Yes, Commander is Neil Armstrong.
Yeah, could be. So I'm sure Captain was given to Armstrong in the last issue, but it's hard to say, like you say, because they don't actually give you a name. So it's hard to actually kind of say, but effectively, one of them gets grabbed by the Wraith, doesn't it? And he's about to throw him in through the portal to kind of suffer maybe either a similar death to Brightside or to send him into a different realm. And as the dire wraith walks over to the portal with either Aldrin or Armstrong, the portal opens up more, and you see Rom floating around. Now, in the previous backup story, Rom and Nakomi have been thrown into this random dimension with this Dorian. It's not Dorian; it's the Space Knight's armor, but filled with the dire wraith. and they're battling it out in this random universe in the middle of nowhere. As his portal opens up, there's Rom, and he sees what's going on. He sees the Dire Wraith, and he communicates with either Aldrin or Armstrong with the weapon, and he says, "Don't shoot. I've got this. I can kill that thing without harming your colleague." And he says, "Okay, then, go for it." He shoots at the ground, missing them, and that's when Rom takes the shot, because obviously that kind of separates them enough to allow Rom to shoot the Dire Wraith through the head. Absolutely obliterates it, and leaves the astronauts kind of like saying thank you, and we get this amazing shot of Rom in the portal, basically just saying, what does he say in the end? He says, "You played that perfectly.
You played that perfectly. My enemy is dead. While you live, Dorian is avenged."
Amazing.
I could have read that better. There's not enough grammar in there. Where's the commas?
It's fine, mate. That's exactly how Ron would have said it.
We have, obviously, we flip over the page, and it's this really nice panel where Rom is standing on one side of the portal in his dimension, and he's standing over the whatever kind of table or sacrificial kind of plinth where Dorian had been sacrificed in issue number 1. And through the portal, like a window, we can see Aldrin and Armstrong, talking to him, and Rom kind of explains to them like who he is, and there's this kind of, I suppose, one of these kind of a sub theme going across this story is the humans were they tell us that they were prepared for non-lethal light forms. It was part of their training that they might encounter NLEs or non-lethal entities when they were in space.
Lols.
And of course, the entities they encounter are totally lethal, and they're surprised and relieved to learn that Rom is out there, that there are good guys fighting the good fight, and who are allied with the humans and with Earth. So it gives them a lot more kind of reassurance in space exploration. And then Rom, after giving his kind of hero speech, he salutes the two of them for their bravery. Off he goes, and the portal just closes up.
And that's where we get them kind of like sorting the flag out, taking the flag out of the dead Dire Wraith, which is amazing. And then very much in the style of the US Marine Corps on Iwo Jima, I think it was, they put the flag back in the ground and hoist it back up. And then they got the shake in the hand with the American flag flying and the Earth in the background, all very patriotic stuff. And then they get back in the shuttle, and they go to then reconnect with Collins, who's floating around the moon. And
yes,
once they make that reconnection, they head on back. Sandra's kind of all fine, and she's set up. They're all all the astronauts are then kind of reunited in their module, and it's basically we don't have to say a word of this. Obviously, we're going to keep this quiet, and they know the mission. And as they're talking about it, the Collins, who's acting a little different, a little weird, has green eyes, and he's obviously been Dire Wraithed. So that's the kind of big reveal, is that they are taking a Dire Wraith back, and it's Collins who's going to be the Dire Wraith on Earth when they get there. And that probably is to link in with how the Dire Wraiths made it to Earth and started their takeover of the planet that led into the Revolution series and so on and so forth.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's a nice little touch there.
Absolutely brilliant. And one of the things we learn here in this last page is that, Michael Collins hasn't had any communication with the lunar landing team while all of this action is going on. So, but we get in the narrative, which we presume is Neil Armstrong's narrative. He said our pilot was sure quiet on the journey home. Who could blame him? For being so isolated and fighting off that last wraith without any help. So clearly, Collins delivered them a story that says, look, somebody came up here and I had to fight this dude. And, so yeah, exactly. And then you get the creepy green eyes.
Yeah, he is a wraith, and unfortunately, Michael Collins, you're the one, mate. You're the one that brought the wraiths to Earth. How dare you? But then, and again, that's the end of that particular story, and I suppose almost like an this whole issue this whole storyline, 3 issues, has been like a prologue to the Revolution series that we've kind of already had in the past, which is really nice, kind of tying it all kind of together. But we do actually get another the backup story, kind of because the two link together, and we get Nakomi and Rom battling Dorian this Wraith in Dorian's armor in this different dimension, this different portal. As they're fighting with each other, they're realizing like the situation, and Rom actually says, he can destroy this particular Wraith without
preserving the dignity of Dorian's visage.
Exactly. So without ruthlessly, metaphorically damaging Dorian anymore, as in Dorian is dead, they keep the armor intact and destroy the Wraith inside. And the actual shot of him destroying the Wraith is really gross, isn't it? Because you've got that pink ooze kind of flying out of the armor,
seeping out of every chink in the armor. It's it's actually brilliantly kind of drawn and colored.
Absolutely. And this is another interesting aspect, is as the portal is minimizing, Nakomi realizes that the only way they're getting out of it is if one of them gets out of it. And he basically uses his power to fire at Rom, pushing him through the portal as it's closing. And Nakomi says, look, I know I'm going to be stuck here, but hell, I'm a bear, I can hibernate. And it's really sad, because it's his friend that he's leaving behind. And Rom kind of makes it, his mission to find him again. He'll find you again. He'll make sure he gets back to him somehow, some way. It's really sad. And I think he uses his scanner to kind of make some final kind of examinations of the portal residue so that he can kind of try and track his friend down. But that's really, it was really sad. And then you just have that shot of Nakomi floating in this random space in the middle of nowhere. And you just think, oh.
Yeah, it's what a sacrifice, because if we roll back right to the last issue, or even the first issue, the Dire Wraiths are fleeing from the Solstice Knights, and they go through the portal after sacrificing Dorian.
Yeah.
And using his power to open a portal, or the power drawn from that sacrifice. Then what we realize at the end of issue 2 is that they've left a Dire Wraith behind in Dorian's armor, who then pushes them through a different portal, or through the portal into a different zone, like it's a trap.
Yeah.
To trap them there and destroy them. So now Nakomi makes a sacrifice of getting Rom back through the portal, back into his own dimension. Nakomi's gone now, and Rom, at least to try and get some sort of justice out of after all the loss he's endured, he tries to track where the other Dire Wraiths have escaped to, and that's where we rejoin the events in the previous story. It's not that Rom reactivates the portal, but it's reactivated from the other side when the Dire Wraith throws Brightside into it, and that's where Rom starts to see the action or the events that are playing out on Aramune.
And that's where he takes the shot and kills the creature, and you get a bit of a repeat in the text in what Rom said to the human astronauts. And then you get this really nice end scene of him saluting them and flying through this really beautiful kind of spacescape with the kind of pink kind of explosion underneath him as he's kind of flying through all this gorgeous kind of space background. And I love when he says Rom, first of the Soulstar Knights, salute you. I love how his name is written in logo form.
Bubble writing, yeah.
It's amazing.
Do you know, though, I'll have to say, right, Rom, he kills one Dire Wraith, fair play, but he never says to the guys, did you guys get the other 3?
Yeah, he doesn't double check, does he?
Doesn't double check. He talks big, but he quits early on the job.
Yeah, why didn't you just fly through? He should have gone through the portal, dealt with everything, because there could have been all sorts going on the other side of that portal. I guess there's probably one of those things where his scanner just told him everything that happened. It's like the magic weapon he has, isn't it? That just either tells him everything he needs to know and destroys everything he needs to destroy. It's like Lady J's convenient javelin weapons. But again, I thought this was a really nice 3-parter. The only thing that kind of that bugs me about the whole thing is the distance between the issues. because we had to wait for so long, it felt like a bit of a disjointed story, when in actual fact it's, quite a nice little contained little subplot, isn't it? A nice little like story and subplot.
It's a really nice, as you say, nicely kind of put together, tight little story. The good thing was, though, before we, prepped for this, was getting to read the other 2 issues again into this. So getting to read all 3 together. This will make a fantastic little trade paperback if they ever, release it in that form. It lends itself to that kind of, the pacing is really, really nice across 3 of them. It moves very, very fast.
Yeah.
The events all happen over a very short space of time. So it was great fun to read the 3 of them back to back. But, we didn't have to wait a long time for sure to get this kind of ending to it all.
And the other thing that I thought was quite funny was the salad tongs on Brightside's armor. But other than that, I really enjoyed. I think I enjoyed the first couple of issues more. So, I mean, it's very. I mean, there isn't. I mean, obviously, the things happen, and there's a cute little reveal at the end that Collins is actually a dire wraith. But in terms of like the story, I really enjoyed that first issue. When we read that first, I was really blown away by how I just thought it was really fun and impressive, and then obviously introduced the Inhumanauts and into that second issue. The second issue was really brutal because there was all those really hideous deaths, like the decapitation and the getting inside the body and making it blow up and all that kind of. There was all sorts of really like harsh stuff in there. Whoa, like that was crazy. And then that little bit at the end when Nakomi sacrifices himself to kind of make sure Rom can continue helping and doing what he needs to do and saving the universe, whatever. It's just really sad, but like again, like a nice little touch for the actual storyline. And I wanted it to be a bit more. I wanted it to be, the fact that it's only a 3-parter is another kind of down for me. Like I wish it had been like maybe a 5-parter. I don't, you probably would have been stretching a little bit for story, but maybe you could have got onto Earth and maybe you had some more story going on there with Earth. Maybe that's where the reveal could have been that one of them was the dire wraith, but on Earth, just things like that. I think would have been quite nice to kind of explore. But overall, really impressed with it.
I think you're right. This is something that could have worked as a 5-parter. I mean, look, we're getting 5 parts to Dead Game, and like there's nothing happening story wise on that. So this could have, like, it's really nice as a 3-parter, but you could have brought a little bit more into it and pushed it out over 5 issues for sure. But I think it's 3 solid issues, so it's better to get that than to get say 3 good issues and 2 filler issues.
And it didn't feel rushed either. There's a lot of there seemed to be like a lot of focus on the battle on the moon as well. Like that's like 2 issues worth basically of that battle going on between the Wraiths and the astronauts and the Inhumanauts. So there's definitely a lot in there, and I really enjoyed it. What would you give this one overall then, Bud, as a potating? We'll do this issue on its own, and then we'll do an overall for the whole thing.
This issue I really liked, I have to say, and taking all things considered, the artwork, even the artwork on the covers as well as in on the story, it's pretty good, and I thought it was a fairly tight, well put together issue. The only thing which I kind of jokingly mentioned there near the end is that Rom doesn't really do any kind of follow up. He kills the one dire wraith and doesn't
half
really
job,
check.
Half job Rom.
Is there any more humans? Can I help you with any more? And even if they said, "Nah, we got them. It's like you're good." If they got it wrong, if the humans got it wrong and said, "Listen, because they didn't know there was another one knocking around," then fine. That would have worked. So, but that's a really small, tiny little nitpick. So I'm not going to really let that kind of take from anything here. Overall, really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a 5. Think it was a really, really nice issue. Overall, I'm actually going to go 4.5 overall, only because I found trying to keep track of the 4 dire wraiths was particularly difficult. Not so much the 2 warrior dire wraiths, but the 2 mystic dire wraiths. One of them got Hank on the Avenger shuttle, and then he goes up to Michael Collins, and then goes to. I actually found that hard to keep track of.
Yeah,
it wasn't really obvious to me as it was going back and forth.
Yeah, that's
where
what I was
these mystic dire wraiths were going. So it did overlap. Now, it's, yeah, but by the time you get to the end of the issue or the end of the story, it's obvious what's happened. But in the moment, trying to keep track of all those different movements while the action is happening down on the surface of the moon, I found that a bit difficult. So just for me, I would say it's a 4.5 all in. But I mean, that's still a pretty good score. And, if you haven't picked these issues up, I would be highly recommending that you get your hands on these if you can, or if a trade comes out in a few months' time, it would be well worth picking up.
Yeah, I agree on those points, definitely. And I think that brings... I'm going to give this particular issue, I thought it was like a kind of 4. I thought it was really, really solid. Really enjoyed it. There was, like you say, a couple of things where you just kind of like... It's not clear what necessarily, and also not really knowing which one was which in terms of the astronauts as well. Obviously, Michael Collins is, but it's really difficult determining who Aldrin and who Armstrong are. And the artwork is kind of very similar. And when you're drawing it through spacesuit, it's really difficult to get any kind of significant features going on that would say this is one and this is the other. So yeah, I did find that quite difficult to keep up with. And I definitely agree with the Dire-Wraiths thing. You have... Even just talking through it then, I'm like, hang on, was there another one? And yeah, there is, because that Dire-Wraith becomes Michael Collins. It can't become Michael Collins and then get killed by Sandra Shen and then come back and be Michael Collins again. So obviously the one that takes out Hank is then taken out by Sandra, and another separate one has managed to get hold of Collins on the command module. So that's how that happened. And then obviously the other guys on the moon surface, that one is taken out by the flag, and the one that's left is the one that gets also taken out by Rom. So yeah, it's like, yeah, that's right, that's 4. So that's what it was. It was 2 kind of warriors and 2 mystics in at the beginning, wasn't it? So that's how that worked. But yeah, I think overall I would give this, the whole series of 3 issues, because of my points about, like you said, your points about the kind of confusing aspect to try and actually follow some of it and identify who was who. I thought the Inhumanauts were taken out real quick, and I know they were in there more as homage than anything else, but it was, it's quite sad that they were all just taken out as if they were nothing. Kiev was supposed to be this warrior with the only weapons. I think she was taken out first. They get into a shoe, don't they? Into a foot, and they
builds up through her boot and consumes it that way. I mean, you would have liked to have seen Kiev kind of, get a couple of shots in, maybe take one of the warriors out, because there was a lot of big talk going down in that issue before Kiev got taken out.
They were making her out to be some sort of war criminal, and then and the other guys were taken out like that. And I think they're even more. They weren't even necessarily fighters. They were just kind of they had tools on their gear, and those tools were there to kind of take samples and run tests and drill and things like that. So they weren't there for they weren't there for for killing. So it's interesting that Salad Tongs is the last one left. And yeah, so I'm going to say, as an overall with all those points, I'd give it a 4 overall and a 4 for this issue. But definitely worth enjoying, and especially if you're an Inhumanoids fan, there's a nice, a couple of nice homages in there, and as just generally as a Rom fan, it's a nice little Rom story, and we get some Rom again, which is great.
It's a great little prologue or prequel to the Revolution series. Artwork's really, really nice. I think it's written very well. It flows really nicely when you read the 3 issues back to back. It's just, the pacing is spot on, and I think it's 3 strong issues is always going to be better than a bunch of fillers.
Absolutely.
So it's a top job to Chris and the rest of the team on this.
Yeah, really enjoyed that, and happy to kind of put a little bow on it as well. Now we finished that one. Do you know what's really funny? When I checked the last Comics Burst where we did issue 1 and issue 2, the graphics change not once, not twice, but thrice. So the first issue we looked at, we were on that kind of old school style with my old diorama backdrop with the kind of pink lines on the black board kind of thing,
yes.
Like the 80s grid. So that was the first issue. The second issue I'd upgraded and done like a digital version of that with the comics burst in like phased in the background and the cover kind of like floating in the mountains. And now we've got this new fancy graphics and everything. So it's hilarious that each issue has had a different look in terms of the comics burst. Yeah. So if you are going to go back and check out those comics bursts, be prepared to be very surprised by the jarring differences in visuals. But anyway, we've got this week, I think, dropping is issue, I want to say 279, or is it 280?
I think it's 279.
Yeah, it's 279, isn't it, I think? And it's the 279. It's the air battle, isn't it?
Air battle, yes! Can't wait!
So really excited to do that, A Real American Hero 279. We have, I think, I'm guessing soon, Dead Game 5, which will finish that 5-parter, and I think Brian and I are very happy that it's ending. We can get that done and dusted. And we'll have...
I'm going to miss Dead Game. I'm going to miss Dead Game because we have so much fun talking about it on this show.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah,
we do. Some of our best work is been done on Dead Game.
Some of our longest work.
Not Rob Liefeld's best work. Our best work.
So hopefully we'll get that to get done too. I'm still hoping for a massive turnaround, but we'll see. And finally, we've got I think, like, in terms of what is outstanding, which is not necessarily outstanding, we have the final part of Operation Bloodhound, which hopefully we'll be able to get to as soon as possible as well. So, yeah, a couple of weeks. Hopefully we're on top of it now, and we're kind of doing stuff as it's coming out, which is great.
We are rocking it, dude. We are rocking it. And while people are waiting for the final part of Operation Bloodhound, go and check out Sea Fury. Check that out. That is Disorder Battle number 1.
That is a graphics difference as well, by the way.
by Rob Turner.
Yeah, we have massive differences in our episode graphics, unfortunately. But yeah, cannot wait for... Yeah, and you say Sea Fury, that links in nicely, doesn't it, with the in-between Part 3 and Part 4 of Operation Bloodhound. That kind of syncs things together. Syncs, not a pun, because it is about the sea battles. But anyway, yeah, we looking forward to getting all this kind of finished and done. But anyway, thanks for joining me, Brian, on this latest episode of the Comics Burst, and nice to get Rom done finally.
My pleasure.
Our pleasure. That's it for this instalment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Brian Hickey. See you next time, and as always, Full Force! We were really tight the last episode, and that was not tight at all, but it's fine.
We're going to do that again. We can do that better.
Okay.
3, 2, 1.
Full Force! That was better. We'll use that one. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback and questions. We also have a Patreon page, so if you want to show your support for the show, see your name up in lights on these videos, or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force.